Good morning, students. Today, I will be talking to you about the first two legal bases of special education. But first, let me just introduce myself. My name is Merkis Amasio, a student from BS Ed 2C, and my hobbies are reading inspirational books. I love collecting notebooks and pens. I love writing calligraphies, and I love serving little children through teaching them about Jesus. And now let us start our discussion. Today I will be discussing to you about the Articles 356 and 259 of Commonwealth Act 3203 and the Republic Act 3562. It is really important to understand the legal basis of special education, since they serve as a guide for us instructors in dealing with students. Legal bases are rules that impose limits on both the teachers and the students to avoid situations in which the right of both parties are violated. Understanding this legal foundation can assist us in determining what a teacher is required to accomplish or vice versa. Okay, so first we have here Articles 356 and 259 of Commonwealth Act number 3203. It states that every child has the right to grow up in an environment that is favorable for his or her physical, ethical, and mental development, as well as the government's responsibility to encourage the full development of each child's faculty. I believe that a child-friendly environment aids to provide a good learning environment that motivates and enables children to learn, most especially to those who have special needs. And children are treated with kindness and respect by staff members or teachers and to respond to all their health and safety needs. And now let's proceed to Republic Act 3562. This is an act that promotes education of the blind in the Philippines. So the act itself was passed during 1963. It established the National School for Blind, a teacher training program for the blind, and the Philippine Printing House for the Blind, as well as launching the integrated education system for the blind. Under the Republic Act 3562, there are 6 sections that are implemented by the Philippine Senate and House of Representatives and Congress. In Section 1, states that a residential school for a blind near Manila to be known as a Philippines National School for the Blind. It shall be created under the supervision of the Director of the Public Schools. Also, it says that the blind will be taught in the school at the elementary level. So in Section 2, the School for the Deaf and the Blind in Pasay City shall stop to provide instruction to the blind upon the establishment of the Philippine National School for the Blind, and all of its blind students, equipment, facilities used in the instruction of the blind, and members of the faculty teaching to the blind shall be transferred to the Philippine National School for the Blind. In Section 3, a teacher training center for the blind instructor shall be established under the direction and administration of the Director of Public Schools. The Philippine Normal College will supply the center with space and other facilities. In Section 4, it was to implement out the provisions of this Act. The Secretary of Education shall issue any rules and regulations that are required. So, in section number 5, it states that the sum of 500,000 pesos is shall immediately taken from any funds in the National Treasury not appropriated to carry out the provision of this Act for fiscal year 1964. It includes the purchase of land, construction of buildings for the Philippine National School for Blind. Following that, the funding required to operate and maintain the school and center shall be included in the yearly General Appropriation Acts. So the last one is the Section 6. So this act shall take effect upon its approval, meaning to say that after being approved, this act will go into effect.
Good day everyone, this is Beverly from BSED English 2C. Before I start my discussion, allow me to introduce and share some information about myself. I am Beverly Oxon, and my hobbies are watching anime, and also I love to collect Jujutsu Kaisen and Tokyo Revengers merch. And my motto in life is, if you can dream it, you can do it. RA 5250, growing social concern for the welfare and integration of PW, voiced by parents and advocates, including legislation led to the enactment of the law in 1968. Established a 10-year training program for teachers and led to the administration of children with disabilities and to regular public schools. However, without appropriate school and the parental support, these had difficulty coping with the regular classes and soon dropped out of the school. There are 9 sections in the Act 5250. The Section 1 is, there is hereby established under the administration and supervision of Bureau of Public Schools, in cooperation with the University of the Philippines, 10-year program for training for teachers of special and exceptional children. Section 2 is, the term special and exceptional children shall include the mentally retarded, the crippled, the deaf and hard of hearing, the speech handicapped, and the social emotionally disturbed, and the gifted. The Section 3 is the institution of learning chosen by the Department of Education to carry out the training of teachers for this program shall grant the necessary credit. Section 4. All expenses to be incurred, therefore, such as tuition and other fees, and stipends of teacher trainees, shall be charged against the funds of the program and shall be disbursed by the Director of Public Schools. Section 5 is, the program shall, as far as practicable, include the setting up of the pilot classes of special and exceptional children and regular schools with the end in view of integrating said children into the regular school program and of encouraging socialization. Section 6. A number of scholarships shall be created every year for 10 years for prospective teachers who shall undertake the training courses. The coordinator of the program shall see to it that scholarship grantees and teachers trainees under the program are intellectually and emotionally prepared to handle special education. Section 7. The Secretary of Education shall issue such rules and regulations and shall employ such specialists as may be necessary to implement the provision of this Act. Section 8. The sum of 350,000 pesos is hereby authorized to be appropriated out of any funds in the National Treasury not otherwise appropriated to carry out of the provision of this Act for the fiscal year 1968. Thereafter, such sum as are necessary for the operation of said training program shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act. Section 9. This Act shall take effect upon its approval. Now we're done with our Republic Act 5250. And now let's proceed to Section 8, Article 15 of the 1973 Constitution of the Philippines. Section 8 says that all educational institutions shall be under the supervision of and subject to regulation by the state. The state shall establish and maintain a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education relevant to the goals of national development. All institutions of the higher learning shall enjoy academic freedom. The study of Constitution shall be part of curricula in all schools. All educational institutions shall aim to inculcate love of country, teach the duties of citizenship, and develop moral character, personal discipline, and scientific, technological, and vocational efficiency. It also mentioned that the state shall maintain a system of free public elementary education and in areas where finances permit, establish and maintain a system of free public education and at least up to the secondary level. The state shall provide citizenship and vocational training to adult citizens and out-of-school youth, and create a maintained scholarship for poor and deserving students. Educational institutions other than those established by religious orders, mission boards, and charitable organizations shall be owned solely by citizens of the Philippines, or corporation or association 60% of the capital of which is owned by such citizens. The control of an administration of educational institution shall be vested in citizens of the Philippines. No educational institution shall be established exclusively for aliens, and no group of aliens shall comprise more than one-third of the enrollment in any school. The provision of the subsection shall not apply to schools established for foreign diplomatic personnel and their dependent school and unless otherwise provided by the law. For other foreign temporary residents, as the option expressed in writing by the parents or guardians and without cost to them and the government, religion shall be taught to their children or wards in public elementary and high school as may be provided by the law. And that's all for my topic. Thank you for listening and God bless.
Good day, students. My name is Irene Grace R. Ambahan from BSed English 2C. Before we start our formal class, I'm going to share to you what are the things I love the most or what are my hobbies. So my hobbies I love collecting different versions of the Bible because here in our house, I have KJV and NIV version. I also love counseling people, guiding and teaching them different strategies on how to overcome adversities and problems in life such as depression, stress, anxiety, fear, and even family problem. And the only problem that I can help you out is that financial problem. So also, you can consider me as your support system, as your burden bearer, a friend, a joker one, and lastly, a life coach. Without further ado, again, my name is Irene Grace R. Ambahan, and I will be your teacher for today. And I will be discussing about the legal basis of special education, specifically Presidential Decree number 603, Article number 3 and 74 of 1978, Presidential Decree number 1509 of 1978, and lastly, Education Act of 1982, or we can call it Batas Pambansa bilang 232. Presidential Decree number 603, or we can call it the Child and Youth Welfare Code of 1978. It was signed by President Ferdinand E. Marcos. It is mandated to coordinate implementation and enforcement of laws, to formulate, to evaluate, to monitor policies, programs, and measures for children, which means this decree focuses on depicting a peaceful and enabling environment for children, which translates to a healthy, active, and alert nourished children protected from abuse and exploitation. This decree also integrates gender equality. Presidential Decree number 603, Article number 3, or also known as the rights of a child. All children shall be entitled to the rights herein set forth without distinction as to illegitimacy, legitimacy, sex, social status, political antecedents, and other factors. So let us discuss the 12 rights of a child. Number 1. Every child has a right to be born well, meaning to say, it is the right of a child to be endowed with dignity and the worth of human being from the moment of his conception. Number 2. Every child has the right to have a wholesome family, which means it is the right of a child to have a wholesome family that will provide him the care, the love, and even the understanding. Number 3. Every child has the right to be raised well and become a contributing member of our society, which means it is the right of a child to have a well-rounded development of his personality to become happy and active member of our society. Number 4. Every child has the right to basic needs, which means it is the right of a child to have a balanced diet, adequate clothing, and a shelter to have a healthy and vigorous life. Number 5. Every child has the right to access what they need to have a good life, which means that it is the right of a child to be brought up in an atmosphere of morality and their needs should be attended always. Number 6. Every child has the right to education, which means it is the right of a child to have education to develop his skills for the improvement of his capacity and to enrich his intelligence. Number 7. Every child has the right to play and enjoy their youth, which means it is the right of a child to have a full opportunities of safe and wholesome recreation activities for them to enjoy. Number 8. Every child has the right to be protected from danger, which means it is the right of a child to be protected from any abuse, exploitation, improper influences, and hazards to his holistic development. Number 9. Every child has the right to live in a productive environment, which means it is the right of a child to live in a community and a society in which develops and cultivates his desirable traits and attributes. Number 10. Every child has the right to be cared for in the absence of their parents or guardians, which means it is the right of a child to be taken care of, assisted, and protected by the state, providing with their fundamental needs for growth and development. Number 11. Every child has the right to good governance, which means it is the right of a child to receive an efficient and honest government that will deepen his faith in democracy. Number 12. Every child has the right to freedom and peace, which means it is the right of a child to grow up as a free individual. Let's proceed to Presidential Decree number 603, Article number 74, or also known as Special Classes. Where needs warrants, there shall be at least special classes for every province and if possible, special schools for the physically handicapped, mentally retarded, emotionally disturbed, and specially gifted. The private sector shall be given all the necessary inducement and encouragement to establish such schools and classes, meaning to say, there should be an institution to be built for the children who have special needs, because as we have discussed earlier, every child has the right to education and we cannot deprive it from them. Now discuss Presidential Decree 1509 of 1978 that was signed by President Ferdinand E. Marcos, which created the National Commission Concerning Disabled Persons, or we can call it NCCDP. It was created to formulate and advocate policies according to internationally and nationally accepted standards in the areas of prevention, of the causes of disability, rehabilitation, and equalization of opportunities for the persons with disabilities or PWDs. In other words, it was created to promote the respect for rights and privilege for the persons with disabilities and also to reorient the general public in their thinking about disabled persons. State shall promote the right of every individual to relevant quality education regardless of their sex, age, breed, socio-economical status, physical and mental condition, social and ethnic origin, and political and other affiliations. The state shall therefore promote and maintain the equality of access to education and as well as enjoyment of the benefits of education by all its citizens. So in other words, this decree establishes the basic policy and objectives for education, and also it establishes the duties, the rights, and obligation of those who are in the education community, such as the parents, the principals, and other non-academic staffs. So in summary of my report, the main purpose of education is to educate individuals within society to prepare and qualify them for work in economy as well as to integrate people to society and teach them morals and values. This report also emphasizes the respect for human rights, especially for the people with disabilities. I hope you learned something from me. Thank you so much for listening. God bless everyone.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am FCY Francine Cabanos coming from BS Ed 2C English. My hobbies were playing musical instruments, playing PC and mobile online games, spending time with my closest friends, and lastly, to serve, to love, and to have fun. I like to drink coffee with my coffee buddies. Maybe if you have time, I would like to have a table talks with you to release the stress and pressures in your life. So in this day, I have three main topics that I will be discussing. First is the Section 24 of Batasang Pambansa 232 or the Special Education Services. Second is Batasang Pambansa 334 or an act to enhance the nobility of disabled person. And the last is 1987 Constitution, Article 14, Sections 1 and 2. Without further ado, let us begin with our assigned topic. First is the Batasang Pambansa Bilang 232, an act providing for the establishment and the maintenance of an integrated system of education. Chapter 2 focuses on the non-education and specialized services. Section 24 Specialized Education Service, the state further recognizes its responsibility to provide, with the context of the formal education system, services to meet special needs of certain clientele, these specific types, which shall be guided by the basic policies of the state embodied in the general provisions of this act. These were includes, the first is the work education or practical arts. It's a program of basic education which aims to develop the right attitudes towards work and technical vocational education. Post-secondary but non-degree programs leading to 1, 2, or 3 years of certificates in preparation for a group of middle-level occupations. Second is the special education, the education of persons who are physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, or culturally different from so-called normal individuals, that they require modifications of school practices to develop them to their maximum capacity. And the last is the non-formal education, whereas any organized school-based educational activities undertaken by the Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports, and other agencies aimed at attaining specific learning objectives for a particular clientele, especially the illiterates and the out-of-school youth and adults, distinct from outside the regular offerings of the formal school system. Thus, Pambansa bilang 334, an act to enhance the mobility of disabled persons by requiring certain buildings, institutions, establishments, and public utilities to install facilities and other devices. Be it enacted by the Batasang Pambansa in session assembled, this act was passed by the Batasang Pambansa last December 7, 1982, signed by Antonio M. de Guzman, Secretary General, and approved last February 25, 1983, signed by President Ferdinand E. Marcos. Section 1, in order to promote the realization of the rights of disabled persons to participate fully in the social life and the development of the societies which they live and the enjoyment of the opportunities available to other citizens. They just live a normal life like an ordinary people. Second is no license or permit for the construction, repair, or renovation of public and private buildings for public use. And the third is public education institution, airports, sports and recreation centers and complexes, shopping centers, and establishments shall be granted or issued unless the owner or operator shall install and incorporate. These features shall reasonably enhance the mobility of disabled persons, provided in that case of the government buildings, streets, and highways, the Ministry of Public Works shall see to it equally. They shall be provided with architectural facilities. The owner or operator shall reserve insufficient suitable in the use of disabled person. The Section 2 announces as in case of public conveyance, devices such as the prominent display of posters or stickers shall be used to generate public awareness of the rights of the disabled and foster understanding of their special needs. Special bus stops shall be designed for disabled person. Discriminating against disabled person is declared unlawful. Section 3 is the Minister of Public Works and Highways and the Minister of Transportation and Communication, in coordination with the National Commission concerning disabled persons, shall prepare the necessary rules and regulations to implement the provisions of this Act. Sections 4, any person violating any provision of this Act shall, upon conviction by court of competent jurisdiction, suffer the penalty of imprisonment, if of not less than 1 month, but more than 1 year, or a fine of 2,000 pesos to 5,000 pesos. Section 5. All laws, executive and administrative orders, rules, and regulations inconsistent with the foregoing provisions are hereby repealed or amended accordingly. And Section 6 is, this act shall take effect upon its approval. So let us proceed with our last topic, which is the Article 14, or the Education, Science and Technology, Arts, Culture, and Sports Education. Section 1 states that the state shall protect and promote the right of all citizens to quality education at all levels, and shall take appropriate steps to make such education accessible to all. And the Section 2 states that the state shall establish, maintain, and support a complete integrated system of education, establish and maintain system for free public education, the elementary and high school levels. And the last is to provide the disabled and out-of-school youth with training in civics, vocational efficiency, and other skills. That is all from my report, and now let us proceed to Ms. Balanza. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. So I was tasked to deliver the last two topics of our group report. But before anything else, let me first introduce myself. My name is Maya Angela D. Balanza. I'm 19 years old, and my likes and hobbies are singing, watching movies, listening to music, cooking, baking, and eating. And my life verse is from Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and the future. So enough with my introduction, and let us now proceed to my report. My first topic is RA 7277. So what is RA 7277? Republic Act 7277 is known as the Magna Carta for disabled persons. It was approved on March 24, 1992, and it is an act providing for the rehabilitation, self-development, and self-reliance of disabled person and their integration into the mainstream society and for other purposes. Disabled persons are part of the Philippine society. Thus, the Senate shall give full support to the improvement of the total well-being of disabled persons and their integration into the mainstream society. Disabled persons have the same rights as other people to take their proper place in society. They should live freely and as dependently as possible. So who are the PWDs or persons with disabilities? PWDs are those suffering from restrictions or different activities as a result of a mental, physical, or sensory impairment to perform an activity in a manner or within the range considered normal for human being. So PWD includes those who have long-term mental, physical, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on equal basis with others. So there are 7 rights and privileges for PWDs. These include education, political and civil rights, health, accessibility, auxiliary social services, telecommunications, and employment. Education. Education recognizes the rights of persons with disability to quality education and opportunities to develop their abilities and skills to thrive in life. The Department of Education shall establish in at least one government-owned vocational and technical school in every province, a special vocational and technical training school for disabled persons. Every person with disability has the right to learn and have knowledge like us, typical learners. Political and civil rights recognize the rights of persons with disabilities to vote and be assisted by a person of his choice in voting in the national or local elections. The state shall recognize the right of disabled persons to participate in processions, rallies, parades, assemblages, or other form of mass or concerted action held in public. The state recognizes the rights of disabled persons to form organizations or associations to promote their welfare and advance or safeguard their interests. Health. Reinforce the rights of persons with disability to attain the disability prevention, recognition, early diagnosis of disability, and rehabilitation. The Department of Health shall establish medical rehabilitation centers in government provincial hospitals and shall include it in the annual appropriation of the necessary funds for the operation of such centers. The state shall protect and promote the right to health of disabled persons and shall adopt an integrated and comprehensive approach to their health development, which shall make essential health services available to them at affordable costs. Accessibility. Ensure the attainment of the barrier-free environment that will enable them to have access in public and private buildings and establishments. Disabled persons should be allowed to drive motor vehicles subject to the rules and regulations issued by the Land Transportation Office. The Department of Social Welfare and Development shall develop a program to assist marginalized disabled persons gain access in the use of public transportation facilities. Auxiliary social services. The state shall ensure that marginalized persons are provided with the necessary auxiliary services that will restore their social functioning and participation in community affairs. Toward this end, the Department of Social Welfare and Development shall develop and implement programs on auxiliary social services that respond to the needs of marginalized disabled persons. Telecommunications. enabling access to telecommunications and technology to promote and implement accessibility for PWD's specific needs. Television stations shall be encouraged to provide a sign language inset or subtitles in at least one newscast program a day and special program covering events of national significance. Employment. No disabled persons shall be denied access to opportunities for suitable employment. A qualified disabled employee shall be subject to the same terms and conditions of employment and the same compensation, privileges, benefits, fringe benefits, incentives, or allowances as a qualified able-bodied person. 5% of all casual, emergency, and contractual positions in the Department of Social Welfare and Development, Health, Education, Culture, and Sports, and other government agencies, offices, or corporations engaged in social development shall be reserved for disabled persons. Now let us proceed to the Republic Act 9442. RA 9442 is also known as the Magna Carta for disabled persons and other purposes. It was approved by President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo on April 30, 2007. This act is about granting additional privileges and incentives on verbal, nonverbal ridicule and vilification against persons with disability. A new chapter to be denominated as Chapter 8, Other Privileges and Incentives, is hereby added to Title 2 of Republic Act 7277, otherwise known as Magna Carta for Disabled Persons, with new sections 32 and 33 to read as follows. Chapter 8. Persons with disabilities shall be entitled to the following: at least 20% discount from all establishments relative to the utilization of all services in hotels and similar lodging establishments, restaurants, and recreation centers for the exclusive use of or enjoyment of persons with disability. A minimum of 20% discount on admission fees charged by theaters, cinema houses, concert halls, circuses, carnivals, and other similar places of culture, leisure, and amusement for the exclusive use of enjoyment of persons with disability. At least 20% discount for the purchase of medicines in all drugstores for the exclusive use or enjoyment of persons with disability. At least 20% discount on medical and dental services, including diagnostic and laboratory fees such as but not limited to X-rays, computerized tomography scans, and blood tests in all government facilities, subject to guidelines to be issued by the Department of Health in coordination with the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation or PhilHealth. At least 20% discount on fare for domestic air and sea travel for the exclusive use or enjoyment of persons with disability. At least 20% discount in public railways, skyways, and bus fare for the exclusive use and enjoyment of persons with disability. Educational assistance to persons with disability for them to pursue primary, secondary, tertiary, post-tertiary, as well as vocational or technical education in both public and private schools through the provision of scholarships, grants, financial aids, subsidies, and other incentives to qualified persons with disability, including support for books, learning material, and uniform allowance to the extent feasible. Chapter 1, Deliverance from Public Ridicule. For purposes of this chapter, public ridicule shall be defined as an act of making fun or contemptuous imitating or making mockery of persons with disability, whether in writing or in words, or in action due to their impairments. No individual, group, or community shall execute any of these acts of ridicule against persons with disability in any time and place, which could intimidate or result in loss of self-esteem of the latter. Chapter 2, Deliverance from Vilification. For purposes of this chapter, vilification shall be defined as the utterance of slanderous and abusive statements against a person with disability, and or an activity in public which incites hatred towards serious contempt for or severe ridicule of persons with disability. Any individual, group, or community is hereby prohibited from vilifying any person with disability, which could result into loss of self-esteem of the latter. Any person who violates any provision of this act shall suffer the following penalties. For the first violation, a fine of not less than 50,000 pesos but not exceeding 100,000 pesos, or imprisonment of not less than 6 months but not more than 2 years, or both at the discretion of the court. Any person who abuses the privileges granted herein shall be punished with imprisonment of not less than 6 months, or a fine of not less than 5,000 pesos, but not more than 50,000 pesos, or both at the discretion of the court. If the violator is a corporation, organization, or any similar entity, the officials thereof directly involved shall be liable thereof. If the violator is an alien or a foreigner, he shall be deported immediately after service of sentence without further deportation proceedings. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you have learned something from this video.